Hello and welcome to another session of Devtoberfest Week 3. This is the third AI Thursday, but I said that in the session before as well. So I'm going to keep it very short here. Just make sure you join the Devtoberfest group in the SAP community. I'm going to link the URL in the chat in a bit. And with that, I already want to welcome Thomas Schneider, who is from the AI Core team, and he's going to explain to us what's new in orchestration in AI Core. And I'm very excited because I think some of the features I don't know myself yet either. So yeah, enjoy.
Thank you, Nora. So yeah, in this session, I want to show you the new features of orchestration and in general also put it in a bit of context of what's coming in Gen AI Hub still within this years or within this year. And I'll also make this more tangible by giving you an example of building a multimodal AI application, how you can then use the new features of orchestration and also what we already have released some time ago. But before we go that, let us first zoom out a bit and get on the same page why multimodal support is a necessity nowadays when you want to really have a serious AI application available globally. So imagine you have your AI app here with one prompt that you have somewhat evaluated, optimized against one model. We just called model one here. And we have rolled out our application now globally, or we are currently doing this. So we have, let's say, 3 landscapes. And then realistically speaking, you will quickly see a couple of issues. So what you will face could be that, for example, in landscape A, we are facing already the rollout of a model deprecation. So our model that we optimized our prompt for is not available. Perhaps in landscape B also happens during peak times. We have observed this ourselves with our applications as well and demo cases, right? That we also can have a temporary outage for a particular model. So if then your application doesn't have a fallback mechanism in place, or even if it does have one, but you don't have an optimized prompt for the next model, you are either facing then an outage of your feature or the performance, the quality is degrading. And also when we look at specific regional differences or regulated industries, maybe this applies to your use case. Sometimes certain providers or models are not available at all. So then, as for example, here in some EU-only access, our model one is not available, and we match this now, our prompt for model one with model three. So we have a prompt model mismatch. That's not so good. Performance is decreasing. So it would be better to have a real multimodal application with dedicated prompts that are optimized for each model. So how we can address this is by a couple of features that we are working on in AI Core. And let's start with the prompts. So in general, not only for the multimodal strategy that we want to apply here, but also to be, let's say, more flexible, more agile when it comes to trying out new models, to keeping your application up to date. It's generally a good idea to decouple the prompts that you have in your code, in your application from the rest, to really have them as separate artifacts, you could say, so that you can also iterate on them way faster. And this is where the prompt registry, for instance, comes into play from the Gen AI Hub, where you can store different versions. So you also have a version management system, and you can easily store for different use cases. You can promote the prompt templates across regions and so on. And pretty much it helps you to manage different prompts for different models. And then you wouldn't call the models directly in your application in this scenario. You would use first the orchestration service. This has the benefit that you develop against one stable harmonized API instead of having the different provider clients in your code. So this also makes it really easy for you then to cover all the code you have to maintain the quality. We will also see this in a couple of minutes in our demo that I have brought. And also with orchestration, you can then integrate additional features quite easily that you commonly would need, for instance, like data masking or content filtering, instead of building these sequences or pipelines yourself in your application. So the combination of orchestration and prompt templates really makes it easy to define fallback cases so that you can make your application more reliable. So in this scenario, then, if landscape A, our model, is not available, model 1, we just use then the second prompt template for the second model. And the same procedure basically applies also across the different landscapes. So in general, the decoupling of prompts from the application drastically, as I said before, right, improves our speed of iterating the prompts. And optimizing and evaluating prompts, this is also something we are handling with the prompt optimizer and evaluation service. These are, I think, the two next big things that are still coming this year. We also think we already had one session on the prompt optimizer. There's also something at TechEd planned also for the evaluation service. With this in mind, let's connect these components to the more general pattern that we see emerging in AI application development. So if we differentiate between the design time that we typically have when it comes to AI applications and working on the prompts and the runtime, you typically would have something like, okay, you start with the first prompt draft. This is considered prompt building. You may use some convenience features here or some UIs, right? And then also you try this out with a particular model, and maybe you also have a small data set, some examples, and maybe also some custom metrics. If you have these things, then you could run, maybe you have evaluation scripts, or this is then also where the evaluation service of GenAI App and AI Launchpad comes into play, that you could use. And then you would optimize these prompts further. This can then be automated, but this can be done automatically then with the prompt optimizer. And the requirement, however, for this is that you have, of course, the prompts detached from your application code, right? So you need the prompt templates, and you can easily manage them with the prompt registry. And then also this integrates nicely with orchestration. So this is then on the runtime side, and then probably you will need some way of collecting feedback, right? So some observability and so on. So these metrics, then the feedback that you get from the runtime aspects of your application, then you can incorporate these into the next iterations of your prompts. So this was now, let's say, the theory behind it. Let's have a look at the multimodal application on the code level, where I will also show you how the code changes if we add more and more features of orchestration. And also there I will highlight what was recently released. For this, I need to switch for a moment my screen share. So I have this somewhat draft of a demo application here with 4 different variants, right? In general,
Thomas,
the use case.
sorry, could you maybe increase the
Yeah,
font a little? Thanks. Cool.
even
Great.
more?
Yeah, I mean,
Fine.
I can see it. I don't know. Yeah, that's better. Okay, cool. Thanks.
Okay, okay. So a few words regarding the demo use case, right, that we have here. So consider we have some package return system, some package processing service, where in the front end, someone is scanning barcodes, right? And then the service is reading this and calls supplier services for product info. And it's also, let's say, analyzing images to verify product conditions. So we also have some sort of quality assurance that here, just to give like just to set the stage basically for this demo app. So if we then now look at the plain version, right? So we have here some controller code, right, with a bare logic. You will see here that we are using 3 different models. So this application from the first variant already is, in a sense, multi-model, because you want to roll this out across industries and globally across regions. So we know that we will have to use different models here. And you will see immediately that doing the same thing in different models requires a different interface. So for example, if we take here the tool definitions or also the response format, these are 2 things that change frequently if you switch the provider. So for example, for Anthropic, we suddenly see that the response format needs to be defined in line with the system prompt. Also, tool usage is defined in a slightly different manner. So this is, of course, really then cumbersome to maintain. If you want to update it somewhere, you need to update it, in this case, at 3 places. So we can definitely improve this. And we also have the same, let's assume, for embeddings. Same scenario here. And going to the next version of the app, how can we improve this? Of course, by introducing orchestration. Here we will see, okay, we have one interface, it's harmonized. You just define everything once, you have one response schema definition, and you can just you can just provide the different models here, but the interface stays the same. And here I want to highlight that we have the same mechanism now also in place for embedding. So also here we have now a harmonized API that you can use. It also supports already masking. So in many cases, you may want to anonymize the data before you send it to an embedding provider, for instance, like Azure OpenAI. And here you can easily do this by defining the different entities like profile person or email, gender, credit card number. There are lots of entities. This is just a subset of what's possible. And then also comparable to what we have seen with the completions, the interface is much simpler. You just reuse what you have to find once, you change the model, and then you build your application logic on top. And you can really then focus on the value at hand for the problem you want to solve. Okay, but this version of the app, although it's already a huge improvement, right, to what we have seen before, still we have all these definitions here, the prompt template hard-coded. So it really makes it then hard to iterate on that. We can't use then, for instance, the other features that I named, like the prompt optimizer and the evaluation service. So let us introduce then here the prompt registry into the play. We have supported this by quite some time already for prompt templates. Now we are extending the persistency to orchestration configs. It's basically the same with the difference that an orchestration config holds all the other information as well, all the other configurations, like for instance, the masking configuration that I have shown in the embeddings example. So we can then here specifically for one model, like here for Claude, we can define our optimized prompts. So now we have also different prompts in an optimized manner, and we can then easily iterate on those. We can read them from the repository, iterate on them, run benchmarks, and also the consumption is way simpler here. Because what we do essentially with orchestration, we can just refer to an orchestration config as we would also do with a prompt template, by the way. by using the scenario name and version identifiers. You can also set an UID that you get from the service back when you persist the orchestration config there. And yeah, this further simplifies our code. I mean, if we look at this controller code compared to how it has looked here in the first version, that's quite an advancement. And I think the structure has a lot improved, but orchestration config persistence, so this is the second feature that we have added now recently, or we are currently in fact rolling this out. So in the coming days, this will be available everywhere. And on top of that, we also have spoken right about the fallback mechanisms that you would need in a global scenario. So of course you can handle this in your code, that's possible. But let's say if you want to give this to orchestration because orchestration has a better information of what is happening in the specific landscape where you are perhaps deploying your service, right? You could also give this to orchestration and this definition of the fallbacks. So we see this here, for example, how this would look like. So that's still an orchestration config. The only difference is now that in the modules, we give the different options. So here we have Cloud 4, Gemini, and then Llama 3. And we are also referencing here to the prompt templates. So everything stays decoupled. This is quite nice because now you have the prompt templates here. You can iterate on those again, right? And you can use the orchestration config, provide additional configuration that stays consistent across the models. For instance, you always want to have some content filtering in place or some data masking, right? And yeah, you are combining this now then with the fallback definition. So if then something fails, if some model is not available, it immediately tries the next one and your application stays callable. So yeah, I think this is already it. So to summarize, we have now as new features the embeddings endpoint. With data masking, we are adding more embeddings, more embedding models to that endpoint with every release, so that you will have then the full coverage of what is available in Gen AI Hub model-wise with this harmonized API. And then we also have orchestration config persistence next to prompt templates. So you can then also here already work on the foundation for the features that are being rolled out in the next couple of months, like evaluation service and prompt optimizer. And what is now soon to come in the next weeks or so is this fallback feature. Yeah, so with this, I would hand it over to you again. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Thomas. As I said, learned something new here today, which is great because I try it out every day anyway, but still there's always something you're missing, right? Um, there was actually one question in the chat already, but I answered it for you, sorry. The question was, how can I use those resources using trial? And I just basically pasted the basic trial here, that's new. But if you have anything else to add, please go ahead. Because, I mean, usually it was on free tier, not on free trial. That's why we have the basic trial, but I don't know if you have anything else. I also said it's pay per use, so technically you can try it out anyway and just
Yeah,
pay the resources you're using. AI Launchpad does have a cost associated to it monthly, but you can also use AI Core without AI Launchpad.
exactly.
Any other questions? Otherwise, I ask my questions first. Okay, I'm gonna watch the chat and see if there's anything else that's coming up. One thing I saw and I really like that, and I knew you already had that feature for quite some time, I think, but I kind of forgot about it, and that is the data masking for embeddings, right? So you can also mask the data that you send to an embedding model, which is something that a lot of people forget when they build RAG use cases. They mask everything they send to the LLM, but they don't check their data
Exactly.
sets and sometimes
Yeah.
just send everything.
Yeah, we also got the question sometimes that, okay, can we do this with embeddings? Isn't this hurting, let's say, the retrieval quality or so? But I guess if you don't want to retrieve over a profile person's name or email, I think this is negligible, right? And you stay here on the safer side if you do the anonymization before you send this to the embedding providers.
Yeah, I mean, technically, it doesn't really matter if you send it to an LLM or an embedding model, right? If you
Yeah.
send personalized information, you shouldn't send it. Yeah, but I mean, I get that a lot from people that build RAG use cases and completely forgot about the embedding model being a model as well, right? So that's interesting. Okay, no questions so far though. I have one more question. Do you have a session during TechEd? Is there anything people can see virtually,
Yeah,
or do you have
we
a
have
hands-on?
we have one joint session, let's say, with Prompt Optimizer. And I think also evaluation service, and I'm also involved in there because yeah, it plays out nicely right with orchestration. So these services have been really built from the ground up with the integration with orchestration in mind and also the prompt registry. So definitely check this one
Yeah,
out if you have. Yeah.
cool. The prompt registry is actually something that is on the very top of my list of what I have to change in my code jam. You know, these like hands-on workshops that we give.
Yeah.
And I'm obviously using the orchestration service in the code jam and the Python SDK as well. But the prompt registry, I'm not using yet, and it really annoys me because I have this gigantic agent prompt, and like I should just store it in there. You know, I have to fix that. It's on the top of my
Yeah.
list,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, it's quite
yeah,
nice because then you also see it in Launchpad. You have it
yeah,
there, right? And then there you can start the evaluation benchmarks then soon.
yeah.
So I think it makes sense to invest on this once
Yes, I will.
to have contact lists, manage them in the registry, and then you basically benefit
Yeah,
from
for
there
sure.
on.
Yeah, one more question I have, but because I get that sometimes, and I mean, I technically know the answer, but I think it's nicer if you say it. When we have new models available, can you also access them through orchestration service? And what a lot of people ask is when they deploy like the orchestration service, do they also need to deploy the model separately? Like what's the difference basically between deploying a model or the orchestration service in with GenAI? Yeah.
Mhm. So we try to add new models once they come out as quickly as possible, also to orchestration. And sometimes it's possible, sometimes we have a slight delay, right? Because we need to work, for instance, on the harmonization. So let's say if we add like a new provider, then we need to work on the harmonization across the different features that the model brings or is using, like tool usage, for instance, right? But in general, the idea is that once a new model comes along in SAP or GenAI app, you can just directly use it in orchestration. You don't need to create like a new model deployment or so. That's not necessary. So you just, in general, always communicate with just one typically orchestration deployment, and you just switch around the models and so on. Maybe on a side note, also here, we also added some time ago, but I think it's still quite new and not many people know about this. In some cases, or for some customers, for instance, you may want to govern which models are available. So sometimes they have some contracts in place that prohibit them to use certain providers, right? And then you
Yeah.
want to govern this also in the AI Core account for that customer. And that's something you can actually configure
Nice.
when you create an orchestration environment. Then you
Yeah,
can say,
cool.
okay,
Okay,
I want
that's
to allow only
yeah.
a certain provider or a certain list of models, or you want to disallow specific ones. So that's possible. And this then will be used by orchestration.
Nice. I mean, especially it makes sense when for example, what I did once was this developer challenge, right? Where we created this escape room, and then I kind of had to give people, it was an online escape room, so I had to share the service key with people, obviously out there, and I was extremely worried that people would
Yeah.
just completely misuse it. And I think back then I had to use like internally, someone helped me to kind of limit the models, but that would have been obviously a lot easier to limit it to like cheaper models. Um, but yeah,
No.
that's a cool feature. I didn't know we have that yet. That's awesome. Um, yeah, and one thing I wanted to add, because I think people don't stretch this enough, and I love that about the orchestration service, is that when you have a new model or you want to try a different model, the cool thing is you really just have to change the model name in the parameter. That's all. Everything else stays
Yeah,
the same. And that's like really my favorite thing about the orchestration service because you can, with the same code base, try all the different models we have available. And that's really cool.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it simplifies a lot. And also, I mean, the maintenance effort, right?
Yeah,
We have
sure.
seen it here in the demo, how the code gets way more compact. So you only need to write unit tests for that and not for the
Yeah,
different clients. So I think
yeah,
it's pretty nice.
yeah. Cool. Okay, there are no questions right now, but thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. And
Thank you.
yeah, probably see you at TechEd or something.
Yeah, yeah. See you
Okay.
there.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Okay.
you. Bye
Bye.
bye.
Okay.